Sarah had always been the kind of girl who believed in fairy tales. At 17, she still hoped that goodness would triumph, that love would conquer all, and that her father's new marriage might actually bring happiness back into their quiet home. She was wrong about the last part. Margaret arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 months after the wedding, with designer luggage and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Sarah's father, Robert, had met her at a business conference, and their whirlwind romance had left Sarah dizzy with confusion. Now, standing in the doorway of what used to be just her and her father's sanctuary, Sarah watched this stranger claim her territory. "Sarah, darling," Margaret said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Your father has told me so much about you. I'm sure we're going to be the best of friends." Sarah forced a smile. "Thank you, Margaret. Welcome home." "Oh, please," Margaret waved her hand dismissively. "Call me Mother." Sarah's stomach twisted. "I already had a mother." The temperature in the room dropped. Margaret's smile froze, and for just a moment, Sarah saw something dark flash across her stepmother's face. Her father, oblivious as always, jumped in quickly. "Sarah, that's not fair. Margaret is trying. Can't you at least meet her halfway?" Sarah looked at her father, the man who used to defend her against the world, and saw a stranger. "Sure, Dad, whatever you want." That night, Sarah lay in bed replaying the interaction. She told herself she was being paranoid, that grief made people see threats where there were none. Her mother had been gone for 3 years, and her father deserved happiness. She would try harder. She would give Margaret a chance. She had no idea how quickly everything would fall apart. The first week was bearable. Margaret cooked elaborate dinners, complimented Sarah's artwork, and seemed genuinely interested in her life. Sarah's guard began to lower. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. Maybe Margaret really did want to be part of their family. Then her father left for a week-long business trip. Sarah came home from school on Monday to find Margaret sitting at the kitchen table, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against a wine glass. The artificial warmth had vanished completely. "Sit down, Sarah. We need to talk." Sarah's heart began to race. "About what?" "About how things are going to work now that it's just us." Margaret took a long sip of wine. "You see, I didn't marry your father to play house with a teenager. I married him for his money, his status, and his connections. You're just an inconvenient detail I have to manage." Sarah felt like she'd been slapped. "Excuse me? Don't play stupid, darling. It's beneath you." Margaret stood, walking slowly toward Sarah like a predator circling prey. "Here's how this is going to work. When your father is home, we're one big, happy family. You smile, you're polite, you call me Mother, and you make him believe everything is perfect. When he's gone, you stay out of my way, you don't ask questions, and you definitely don't cause problems." "And if I don't?" Sarah's voice shook, but she held her ground. Margaret laughed, a cold sound that made Sarah's skin crawl. "Then I make your life very, very difficult. I can be quite convincing when I need to be. Your father already thinks you resent me. How hard do you think it would be to convince him you're troubled, acting out, maybe even dangerous to yourself?" Sarah's blood ran cold. "He would never believe you." "Wouldn't he?" Margaret tilted her head. "He's barely noticed you since your mother died. He's drowning in guilt and loneliness, and I'm his lifeline. Who do you think he'll believe? His new wife who loves him, or his angry teenage daughter who's never accepted me?" Sarah wanted to scream, to fight back, to run, but fear paralyzed her. Margaret was right. Her father had been so distant since Mom died, so desperate for a fresh start that he'd rushed into this marriage without really seeing who Margaret was. "Why are you doing this?" Sarah whispered. "Because I can." Margaret returned to her wine. "Now go to your room. I have phone calls to make." Sarah stumbled upstairs, her mind reeling. She locked her door and pulled out her phone with trembling hands. Who could she call? Her friends wouldn't understand. The school counselor would just call her father. She was trapped. The week dragged by in agonizing slowness. Margaret ignored her completely, treating her like a ghost in her own home. Sarah barely ate, barely slept, jumping at every sound. When her father finally returned Friday evening, she almost collapsed with relief. "There are my girls!" Robert boomed, dropping his briefcase and pulling them both into a hug. "I missed you both so much. How was your week?" Sarah opened her mouth, but Margaret beat her to it. "Oh, it was wonderful, wasn't it, Sarah? We had such quality time together. I think we really bonded." Margaret's eyes locked onto Sarah's, a clear warning in their depths. Sarah felt her father's expectant gaze. She knew what Margaret wanted, knew the game she had to play. The words tasted like poison. "Yeah, Dad, it was great. See?" Robert squeezed them both tighter. "I knew you two would get along once you had time alone. This is exactly what I hoped for." Sarah felt tears burning behind her eyes, but forced them back. That night at dinner, she watched Margaret play the perfect wife, laughing at her father's jokes, asking about his trip, touching his arm with practiced affection. Her father ate it up, more relaxed than Sarah had seen him in years. "Sarah, honey, you're quiet tonight," her father said, finally noticing her. Before Sarah could respond, Margaret jumped in. "She's just tired. We stayed up late a few nights talking. Girl talk, you know." She winked at Robert. "I think we exhausted her." Her father laughed. "Well, I'm glad you two are getting close." Sarah excused herself and went to her room, where she finally let herself cry. She felt like she was losing her mind. How could her father not see what was happening? How could he be so blind? The weekend passed in a blur of false smiles and forced conversations. Margaret maintained her perfect facade, and Sarah played along, too afraid of the consequences to do anything else. But inside, she was breaking. Monday morning, Sarah stood in front of her bathroom mirror, barely recognizing the hollow-eyed girl staring back. She couldn't keep doing this. She had to tell her father the truth, consequences be damned. She found him in his study before he left for work. "Dad, I need to talk to you. It's important." Robert looked up from his computer, distracted. "Can it wait? I have a meeting in 20 minutes. "No, it can't. It's about Margaret." His expression hardened. "Sarah, please. Not this again. You haven't even heard what I have to say." "I don't need to." Robert stood, his voice rising. "I know you miss your mother. I miss her too. But Margaret is part of our family now, and I need you to accept that." "She's not who you think she is." Sarah's voice cracked. "When you're gone, she's completely different. She threatened me, Dad. She said she only married you for your money." Robert's face turned red. "That's enough. I can't believe you would make up such horrible lies just because you're jealous." "I'm not lying. Margaret warned me this might happen." Robert shook his head. "She said you might try to come between us, that you'd probably make up stories to turn me against her." I didn't want to believe it, but here we are." Sarah felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. "She warned you? When?" "Last week, while I was away. She called me crying because she was worried about you. She said you'd been acting strange, hostile, and she was concerned about your mental state. She wanted to help you, Sarah, but you're making it impossible." Sarah realized then how thoroughly she'd been outmaneuvered. Margaret had laid the groundwork perfectly, framing everything so that any accusations Sarah made would sound like exactly what Margaret had predicted. "Dad, please, you have to believe me. What I believe is that you need help." Robert's voice softened slightly, but his words cut deep. "Margaret thinks we should consider therapy for you, maybe medication. She's concerned you're having some kind of breakdown." "I'm not having a breakdown. I'm trying to tell you the truth." "The truth?" Robert looked at her sadly. "The truth is, you're so stuck in your grief that you're trying to sabotage my happiness. But I won't let you, Sarah. I won't let you destroy this family." Sarah backed away, tears streaming down her face. "She already has." She ran from the study and didn't stop until she was locked in her room. She heard her father leave for work, heard Margaret's footsteps on the stairs, heard the soft knock on her door. "That went well, don't you think?" Margaret's voice was muffled but triumphant through the door. "Your father thinks you're unstable now, maybe even dangerous. By the time I'm done, he'll probably send you away to some boarding school or treatment facility. Either way, you'll be out of my house. Sarah slid down against the door, hugging her knees to her chest. She felt completely alone, trapped in a nightmare with no way out. Her own father didn't believe her. The woman who'd promised to destroy her was winning. But as Sarah sat there in the darkness of her room, something shifted inside her. The fear and despair began to crystallize into something harder, something sharper. Margaret had underestimated her. She thought Sarah was weak, easy to break, easy to discard. She was wrong. Sarah pulled out her phone and opened the voice recording app. She'd been trained her whole life to be good, to be obedient, to play by the rules. But Margaret had changed the rules. If her father wouldn't believe her words, she'd get proof. She'd record every conversation, document every threat, gather evidence until even Margaret's perfect lies couldn't hide the truth. The wicked stepmother had won this battle, but the war was far from over. If you want to see how Sarah fights back, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below telling me what you think Sarah should do next, and don't forget to hit that like button. Part 2 is coming soon, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when Sarah stops playing defense and starts playing to win. See you in the next video.